Hi folks, Professor Kwong here. In this video, we're going to be talking about CHD Taxonomy, Child Development Taxonomy. So what is this taxonomy, you may be wondering about? Let's go ahead and talk about it. So what do you see here? What do you see where my hands are pointing to? You see pictures. Maybe you see blocks. You see letters, or maybe the formation of letters. And maybe down below you see Play-Doh. You see a child playing with Play-Doh. Now, these are experiences for the child. Playing with blocks, it's an experience. Playing with Play-Doh, learning how to make marks, those are all experiences in the early childhood setting. Every experience in the early childhood classroom provides an opportunity for possible learning and development. And this is what we consider as outcomes. We're looking at these experiences and we're trying to see what the child will learn from them, because a child learns through play. So with that, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about what outcomes are. Outcomes supports the child's growth and development. We need to recognize the possible outcomes that allows us to plan experiences to support the child's growth and articulate what might be learned to families. Basically, we're trying to show what the child is learning in those experiences by having outcomes. And we need to use verbs to describe those outcomes, all right? When we are measuring these outcomes, we use a set of verbs, which helps us describe what is observable, right? What we can see or hear. We use these verbs to describe the outcomes. So, you may be wondering, okay, how do I do that practically? Let's go ahead and talk about it. Here are a few examples of a child that is engaging with mark making. So a child that is, let's say, scribbling on a piece of paper. Maybe they're scribbling on a wall or a table. Hopefully they're scribbling on a piece of paper. Mark making, what is it all about? What's the purpose? What does a child learn from mark making? At first glance, it seems very innocent. They're just making marks. They're not really learning much. And that's our first assumption, probably. But when we dive a little deeper into it, they're actually learning a lot about mark making. First off, they recognize the marks that they make on the paper. Right? They recognize the marks that they're making on the paper. That's so key. They identify their own marks. They're able to distinguish which marks are theirs versus their other colleagues. And they're able to discuss what their marks represent. If you've ever worked with children, their drawings, their marks can have a different meaning than what they look like. And of course, we begin each statement with children will. All right, children will. That's how we begin each statement to describe an outcome. So you may be wondering, okay, how does this look more practically? What can I do? Okay, so let me talk about it. We need to begin each statement with children will, and then after you said children will, please choose a verb that best represents their potential learning outcome. Okay, so make sure to start off children will, and then have a verb that describes what the child may learn through your experience. And you may be wondering, okay, so what are some of those verbs? Let's go ahead and talk about it. So there are different sets of verbs, and I'm going to be describing a little bit about each one. Or each category, I should say. Verbs which indicate effective emotional outcomes. Those would include enjoy, respond, prefer, pursue, value, attend. Those are all verbs that we can use with emotional outcomes, okay? And then we have other sets of verbs that indicate cognitive, basically thinking or reasoning outcomes. And those would include recognize, distinguish, identify, describe, discuss, explain, organize, estimate, compare, / contrast. All right. And then you'll also notice that verbs which indicate psychomotor bodily movement triggered by mental activity outcomes would include attempt, adjust, position, demonstrate, manipulate. And then we also have the following verbs that should be used when describing a specific motor skill. If we want to be more specific, we would say practice. So basically it would be the child will practice to pinch or grasp, or a underhand throw. And then last but not least, these set of verbs are used with sensory experiences for infants and toddlers. So if you're planning to work with infants and toddlers, these are the verbs that you want to use: hear, see, smell, taste, touch. Now, I know that was a lot. There are a lot of different verbs, but they're all used in different situations. But the great thing is you have a set of verbs to use to describe your experiences, and that is a very key part when we are looking at explaining to our parents what the child is actually learning. All right, folks, if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. I'll put my email down below if you have any questions. But folks, please take care, stay safe,